Good morning, everybody. This is Elise Hatting from TIPS, and I'm the lead researcher on this project. So I just wanted to say a warm welcome as we settle in. We're going to start now. It's 10 o'clock, and if you feel free to just indicate the stakeholder group that you feel you present today, the hat that you are wearing. You might be an SME, you might be from the private sector or a government organization, an NGO, research organization, or perhaps an incubator or an organization that offers business development support for entrepreneurs, university, or another group. We welcome everybody today, and we're really looking forward to this discussion. With me is Dr. Michael Hector, and also Zal, who is our project coordinator. She's the host, the fantastic host that made this Zoom possible for us. So yes, we feel that this work is really important, and I'd like to just give you a little overview before I talk a little bit about what is to be expected for today. But basically what we are looking to really dig into today is to have a discussion around newcomers, new SMMEs that are entering green industries, which is part of the just transition, make sure that nobody is left behind. So we've taken the time of this project to investigate business barriers that newcomers such as youth-owned entrepreneurs, female-owned entrepreneurs, people with disabilities, and also Black-owned are experiencing. We feel it's really important that there is participation from these minority groups that are often marginalized and left behind. So they also have a place to build a low carbon economy and to move us to a green economy. So that is why this work is really important for us. This work is funded by the PI Fund, which is the Fund on International Energy. And this is part of the international platform hosted at the Stitching European Climate Foundation, known as the ECF. So this funder has been working with us. We've been in month 5 of the project. It's a 12-month, and we're working very closely with the Department of Small Business. They have a green economy unit that Mzol is leading, and we're in close collaboration. We've had a series of 3 focus groups, first with the energy group and then the water sector. And today we're looking at the waste sector. So we're looking to get a really deep understanding of sectoral challenges that SMMEs, that we call local green LGEs, are experiencing in these sectors to grow their businesses. And we really look forward today to better understand how the ecosystem in terms of national government and also in the providers in the industry, what they are seeing as SMME barriers, but also maybe some of the limitations in supporting entrepreneurs, which is always good to understand the ecosystem challenges. But we're also going to be hearing from a few entrepreneurs that will share with us their insights on the day-to-day operational challenges within the sector, but also maybe some of the challenges that is external to their business, that is not in their hands. So the idea is that we will provide a workshop report and summarize these findings and make policy recommendations. We also have a combined workshop, in-person workshop that will take place on the 31st of July in Pretoria at the Sheraton Hotel, and we will be inviting all the stakeholders here today, where we are going to present from our research to give you a view of these 3 sectors and the policy brief that we've been developing. So with me is Dr. Michael Hector. He is a specialist within the waste sector from Stellenbosch University. When he hands over to his presentation, I'm going to ask him to talk a little bit about his background, but we've been very fortunate to work with Dr. Michael Hector as a researcher at TIPS, who is very vested into taking time and really understand how the informal sector as well can play a role in terms of just transition. And Michael, maybe we just hear from you for a minute, if you'd like to just talk a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Elise. Yes, I'm excited to be here today. So my background is essentially in political science or international relations, but I had a sort of keen interest in waste management in South Africa, specifically when we speak about the just transition. And my focus has essentially been looking at how involved um, the informal sector, specifically waste pickers or waste reclaimers, as they're otherwise known as, um, how they are incorporated into this just transition. And if we move towards sort of modernizing the waste management system, what efforts need to be done essentially in bettering their position, and so that if we're going to use the slogan of leave no one behind, truly they are the ones that we should not leave behind, because they do essentially provide very much a vital service to the overall sustainable waste management, especially in countries like South Africa. So Elise, can I go ahead with, or do
Yes, you're
you want,
welcome.
okay, do
You're
you want to
welcome.
go through the program?
Yes, I think if you want to talk
Okay.
about the program, you're welcome. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so today when we started this research, we sort of spread the net wide in terms of getting stakeholders involved and getting the opinions, and really finding out what is happening on the ground. How does policy, for example, impact these SMMEs? So as you can see by our program, we've got a wide array of ecosystem stakeholders, from the DFFE to the SRI, and Cause Development Agency. But then we've also got the SMME insights later on, which are a few SMMEs that we chose to sort of present the work that they do, but then also the challenges that they face. So before we get into that, Elise went through the sort of the outcomes of our research already. So I just want to, for those, and I know if most people here are within the waste sector ecosystem and you're very familiar with what's going on, but for those who are sort of relatively new to the waste sector ecosystem, I would just like to go briefly through this ecosystem. So essentially, one of the biggest issues as a researcher myself, and Elise as well, and for many of you present here today, is that gathering waste data is very much a challenge in South Africa. And it's something that we struggle with on a daily basis, specifically with issues like where few municipalities actually have functional weigh bridges. So this makes it a little bit more complex when we attempt to sort of find out exactly how much waste is being generated. So some of the data that we do have stretches back to 2017. To my knowledge, that is the most up to date of what we have at this point in time. And essentially, we found that South Africa generated about 108 megatons of waste in 2017, while only 10% of that waste that was being generated was actually being recycled or upcycled. In the overall waste sector, we know that there is a great potential to improve not only the waste sector, but also for the waste sector to become a source for job creation through the idea of the circular economy. Now, when we look at the waste sector, we need to acknowledge that each waste stream has its own set of issues. This is something that we found through key informant interviews, through speaking with SMMEs, through speaking with experts in the field, is that organic waste is obviously not the same as electronic waste, for example. And the SMMEs within those spaces will face some of the issues that they face will be the same, but then there'll be other issues that are not the same. And we've essentially realized that there is a need for very much strategic responses, whether this be at a programmatic level or at a policy level. So we also need to acknowledge that responses such as the extended producer responsibility, or EPR, although it is a step in the right direction, it is not essentially the silver bullet that's going to solve all of the waste management issues in the country. For example, it is difficult to use EPR to enforce things like organic waste or construction waste. The other things that we need to keep in mind is that the waste sector in South Africa has very much a large informal sector. And when we speak of the informal sector, we're speaking about those waste pickers or waste reclaimers. And this adds a certain level of complexity that needs to be addressed if we are speaking about a just transition and using the sort of slogan, leave no one behind. So this complicates matters when we attempt to sort of come up with policy recommendations or even programmatic interventions. We know that there has been attempts over the years from national government, also provincial and certain municipalities, to sort of formalize the informal sector, which had various levels of success and failures. However, this language has sort of changed, whether specifically within policy like the National Waste Management Strategy, where there is talks of, instead of formalization, but rather integration. Other issues that are pertinent within the waste ecosystem is enforcement issues of national policy. We see that when we've come across that landfilling is still an issue within the country, especially landfilling costs, where it's relatively cheap, and there are even instances where land filling costs, although they have increased, they are still low compared to international standards, for example. And this creates an issue where it becomes cheaper to, say, landfill organic waste, for example, than what it is to recycle, upcycle, and essentially send it up the value chain. However, there have been efforts being made, and we've spoke extensively to officials in the Western Cape Province. But we still see an issue on the lack of national policy enforcement at various municipalities. And this can be for a variety of reasons, whether this is due to a lack of finance or even just a lack of capacity. And at the end of the day, and it's something that we sort of reminded ourselves when we were looking at the waste sector, is that waste is a volume business. It needs to make business sense, otherwise SMMEs are not able to survive. Now, within the waste ecosystem, there are a number of policies that essentially support the management of the waste sector. I will not go through every single policy, but if you do see a policy that we present here today, and you do see that maybe there's something within that policy that affects you directly, whether that be negative or positive, you're more than welcome to put that in the chat or even answer some of the polls that we are going to put out during our talks today. Firstly, we start off with the 2008 Waste Act. There's also the National Waste Management Strategy, which was recently updated in 2020. And then we've also got the extended producer responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, things like the Waste Master Plan, the Chemical and Waste Fakiza, and then also the specific provincial and municipal policies, which will affect SMMEs based on the region in which they are. Now, when we look at the waste management ecosystem, we can see that there are a variety of stakeholders that essentially support the just transition of SMMEs. And this ranges from government, DSI, DFFE, the CSIR, provincial, municipal. We've also got international organizations, the private sector, large businesses like Safripol in the polymer industry, universities and research institutions like TIPS and Green Cape. And then you've, most importantly, recently, also the producer responsibility organizations and then also industry associations. So this essentially paints a picture that the stakeholders within the waste management system are vast. Now, when we look at the waste sector and it being part of the green economy, waste is essentially the antithesis of what is regarded to be a green economy. However, managing waste comes with its own sets of challenges, and this is where we see that SMMEs can play a vital role in this just transition. And as you know, waste has a multitude of waste streams, whether it's plastic waste, electronic waste, organic waste, construction waste, or hazardous waste. And SMMEs play various roles in either the upstream value chain or the downstream. Now, we sort of pinpointed a number of opportunities for SMMEs within this waste sector. And there are several upstream and downstream opportunities for SMEs. And many of these SMEs are already doing amazing work within these spaces, which we will hear about later from our SMME speakers. And this ranges from recycling services to waste reduction services, rubber tire recycling, and even electronic and electrical equipment repair and refurbishment businesses. And these are just a few of the sort of services and work that is being done within the waste sector. Sorry, I went a bit too fast there. Now, each of these SMMEs within these waste streams, we noticed that from our participants, from our key informant interviews and through desktop research, the waste sector could be considered green, or those SMMEs within the waste sector could be considered providing green services by the virtue of what they are doing. So they are essentially already green because of the work that they do on the ground. However, these SMMEs face a multitude of barriers that make it very much challenging for them to succeed, and if they do want to even grow. So in 2023, we conducted the Broad Business Barrier Survey, and we essentially looked at these broader barriers, things like procurement, issues like load shedding, internal, external challenges. And then we took these sort of barriers and essentially grouped them into being internal and external business barriers. And we then rated them on a level of severity. Now, the internal barriers are those barriers within the SMME that are specific to that SMME within that waste stream. And these are things that we will touch on a bit later, and I'll go into detail into that. And then there's also those external barriers, things that are outside influencing factors, such as government regulation, red tape, for example, and even things like load shedding, access to land, and so forth. And these barriers were rated from a level of 1 to 3, 1 being not very severe and 3 being severe. Now, when we conducted the Broad Business Barrier Survey in 2023, we found that SMMEs within the waste sector face challenges related to having limited track record, for example, which made doing business and starting up a little bit harder. A lack of support from government, for example, having issues with having access to markets, and then also struggling to compete with larger business, which was something that even came up during key informant interviews. And especially these issues were very pertinent, especially things like competing with larger businesses was a pertinent issue for newcomers into the sector. Now, we then directed our attention to certain internal and external barriers that face these SMMEs. And we looked at internal and external barriers for various substreams within the waste sector, being e-waste, being organic waste. We found as much information and as much key informants as possible that were operating in those spaces. And we used information from Green Cape Market Intelligence Report for Waste and key informant interviews from a variety of stakeholders. So the picture that we attempted to paint was not only the view from the SMMEs, but also the view from government, from municipalities or provincial government, funders within the sector as well. And we measured these internal and external barriers looking at the following criteria. Looking at internal barriers such as marketing capacity, compliance, their internal operations, their finance and capital management, their skills, human resources, R&D and patent access. For external barriers, we looked at things like the reach of government support, burdensome regulation, things like red tape, for example, or licensing. We also looked at geopolitical and macroeconomic issues, things that like load shedding, for example, or access to land, perhaps the plastic ban by China a few years ago that would essentially affect SMMEs. We looked at things like access to finance and credit. We also looked at the lack of demand and support side or support issues, things like logistics, access to volumes, because waste is essentially a business based on volume. Now, for the external barriers, through this sort of desktop research and also key informant interviews that we got, as you will see on the spider diagram, you'd see that among a whole host of issues, access to finance and inadequate regulations were some of the things that popped up time and time again through interviews, through doing desktop research, especially when it relates to governmental red tape, especially licensing, the cost of licensing, and also other things like access to market was some of the biggest barriers for SMMEs in the waste sector. When it comes to red tape, there were some key informants that we interviewed that even noted how outdated certain licensing and policies were, especially at the procurement age. So then that started to create a sort of barrier to entry. Another issue that came up time and time again relates to local demand support barrier, where we looked at things like logistics and infrastructure and access to volumes. And because waste is a volume business, one of the biggest issues raised by a number of key informants from SMMEs in the sector is gaining access to those waste volumes and having adequate infrastructure to conduct their business. Some of the evidence that we found that a lot of SMMEs or micro enterprises rather that were sort of situated at the collection phase, a lot of them were operating out of the yards or in their garages. And a lot of the key informants noted that they did not have adequate land to essentially grow their business if they wanted to do so. One issue that needs to essentially be highlighted is also the issue of a barrier to entry, especially for female-owned businesses. So we essentially cannot ignore that the waste sector is very much a male-dominated ecosystem. So it is very difficult for female entrepreneurs to essentially break through in the sector. And then lastly, we started to look at the sort of internal barriers. And we found a few sore points, as you can see on the spider diagram, that being finance and capital access, and then also skills. Access to finance sort of came out as the major issue for SMMEs in the waste sector, where they found that many banks were not willing to take up the risk of funding their business. And then we also need to highlight that SMMEs need to essentially be bankable, which is going to require adequate policy that supports these SMMEs. And skills essentially became very much dependent on the size of the business and also the size of the waste stream to be dealt with. So essentially having the proper skills and equipment requires significant financial resources and investment. And many of the SMMEs do not have the resources and infrastructure to invest. And this sort of became a vicious cycle. Other issues that were raised by some governmental interviews that we did was an issue, and this relates to more of an internal barrier for the SMMEs, was the issue of compliance, especially on the side of micro and informal business. And this essentially highlights the complexities within the waste ecosystem. And there's essentially a greater need within the entire ecosystem for awareness and advocacy, but then also training programs. And these were some of the things that we essentially highlighted and started to look at in depth. Now, in conclusion, there are a number of points that I would like to raise before I end of my section and hand over to our speakers today. We need to understand that waste is also a logistical issue, and it needs to make business sense. So waste collection, access to volumes can be a major challenge for those within the sector. Add this to the fact that SMMEs have to compete with larger companies in the sector, and the challenges simply keep on piling up, and it makes doing work a lot more difficult. We add governmental red tape, which then does not sort of is conducive for these businesses to grow and to succeed. Now, for most waste streams, it's not economically viable to run a business off it, unless someone is essentially subsidizing that value chain. And this is where the effective implementation of EPR will essentially come into play. So that's also something that we then need to start looking at. And lastly, many of the SMMEs in the waste sectors are what can be termed survival entrepreneurs that move into the waste value chain, especially at the collection phase, somewhat in an informal manner, as a means to essentially survive. And usually this does not last long, as some either move out of the sector once they've found formal work, or remain in the sector, but we cannot sort of determine exactly the size of that sector, and we have to rely essentially on estimations. That's all from my side, Elise, and I will hand over to you to introduce us to our speakers for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate those insights. I think there's a lot to think about. Before we go into the panel, I would really like to encourage all the stakeholders in the room that this time today to share with you your views. Michael will be running a couple of polls that will pop up to participate and have your say. Your voice is really important to us, your green voice, and even your perspective of where you're sitting within the stakeholder ecosystem. So the first poll, we've got a couple of polls. If we run back to that, the poll one ended just in terms of who's in the room, but maybe let's just quickly take a minute to look at the results. Okay, so let's see. The majority is SMEs, 50% of SMEs in the room today, and that is fantastic because for us, it's really important. We have one-on-one conversations with you. We're writing up case studies, but we want to make sure that we get this right as researchers. You are the SMEs in the room and you know your own unique challenges. So please feel free to use the chat. We're going to have an opportunity in the panel session for more entrepreneurs to voice their concerns. But we are very much aware that, write down your challenge in the chat. Let us know what is the issues you are struggling with, because we'd like to record that. So then we also have private sector, government, we've got research organizations, and we've got a couple of waste sector incubators and network organizations. That's really welcome. Then let's just have a look at the next poll that was launched. Okay. So the question here is, which of the barriers do you think applies to your business at this current stage? So we understand if you're a newcomer to green industries and you might be a youth-owned entrepreneur, a female-owned entrepreneur, Black-owned, or people with disability-owned, that you might not have been in the sector for many, many years. You're still a newcomer and you face significant challenges. So if you're in an ideation stage, startup stage, or you're fully commercialized, feel free to let us know. We're looking here, we're saying that the majority here of, okay, it's changing. Let's have a look. 45% is saying government and red tape and licensing. All right, that's definitely something we want to go deeper in today. We're looking at infrastructure and technologies as a sore point, access to market, access to finance, and skills gaps. So I think these are the things that we're very much aware of. Thank you for everybody that participated. I'm going to end that poll for now and share the results, that you can also have a look at the results coming up. And then we're going to have some time now to go over to introducing our panel. So what we've done today is we've invited key informants from the ecosystem. You've seen in the chat already many people introducing themselves, but I'm quickly going to go over our key informants. Michael, if you don't mind going back to that panelist, thank you so much. So we've got DFFE, we've got Dr. Janitha Badul. She's going to be talking to us first up. Then we also want to talk a little bit to Suzanne and Aisha. They're from the National Waste Management Strategy. And I also saw some indication of the African Circular Economy Network, talking about policy development for transformation. That transformation agenda is really, really key for us. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about access to market with Nicolette Boyens from the Course Development Agency. We often find entrepreneurs being a bit bullied and pressurized to become bigger businesses to be able to compete with procurement guidelines that the bigger businesses can easily adhere to. And we're finding this more and more. So we want to understand also, what does it take to get access to market, even if you're a very small entrepreneur and you're not going to ever maybe grow to be the bigger business. And that's okay. I think there needs to be a space for the smaller entrepreneurs, even lifestyle businesses, to participate in a just transition leading towards a low carbon economy. Then we have R&D and technology development. Julie, initiatives and support in this area with entrepreneurs. They also are focusing a lot on greening many other entrepreneurs that's not necessarily in the waste sector, but they have a strong agenda to help any entrepreneur to minimize their waste, to be more energy and water efficient. Then we're going to be talking to access to finance. We are so happy that Nicholas is here from USplus. It's very important to talk about how do you access finance, and USplus is a revolutionary banking institution that is really giving access to finance at a very small amount, and short-term working capital, very low interest to zero interest rates. And they are really key to helping entrepreneurs within the waste sector to get access to funding when they need to move to get pay their service providers just to be able to service their clients on a short-term basis. And the entry criteria that USplus provides is very low. So we feel that they are really presenting a kind of just transition where finance needs to be moving. Then we're also going to be talking about business development and incubation programs. So we're very happy to have Shamila here from Indalo Inclusive. They're doing fantastic work within transformation and be very mindful of inclusivity, and working also within the just transition in Mpumalanga very actively. So we're really looking forward to hear their voices. So that's the first part. Then we're going to hand over to the next section, which is then going to be talking to some of our SMMEs, and I'll introduce them when we get to that point. I'd like to just remind all the panel speakers, we're doing very well for time, but please keep your inputs regarding and the barriers and your service provision and your role in the ecosystem to around 10 minutes, if that's okay. Thank you. Is Janitha in the room? I just want to make sure if we've got our first speaker up.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for the delay in the link and the communication. You can join us. I'm going to hand over to you to do your own introduction. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elise, and good morning to everybody. Apologies for joining in late. I'm actually the Senior Policy Advisor at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, and I'm responsible for coordinating internationally funded programs under the green economy sector. The SMME focus is one of the areas that I also provide some attention to. And this morning, I have missed the opening remarks as well as Michael's presentation. Apologies for that. I don't necessarily want to repeat, some of the challenges or opportunities which have been may have already been mentioned. What I would want to do is maybe just skim through my first few slides and then talk to the value chain itself and where the opportunities lie for SMMEs itself. So, Michael, I have shared my presentation with you. Is it possible for you to put the slides up? Thanks. So, whilst the work that I have been undertaking in the department since 2020, focusing on SMMEs across different sectors, one of the guiding points provided to me by the team was to look at the SMMEs within the waste sector value chain. Next, please. So we obviously are quite familiar with some of the challenges and opportunities that SMMEs may be focusing on a regular basis. And I think we need to not discount the fact that there is a secondary value chain which SMMEs can actually get involved in. And I've used the example of, if you're looking at biomass, or the primary output would be furniture, for example, and then we have byproducts from it, and obviously it provides opportunity for other industries to come in, but more pertinently is the circularity of these industries as well that can actually allow for SMMEs to get involved. Now, secondly, it does provide for livelihood opportunities. Job creation is a third big area that SMMEs can actually assist in alleviating the joblessness that we are experiencing in South Africa for some years now. And then the training and grant opportunities that come in the space as well is obviously quite big, but in most cases, SMMEs still struggle to actually access the funding opportunities, or maybe try to get involved in or are in the know of some training opportunities that may be provided to them, or they may not be directed to areas where the support can actually be accessed. So, I mean, I think all in all, they also allow for us to address the socioeconomic conditions in that they target the low to semi-skilled employees, depending on the type of SMME that is set up. And usually in the waste sector, this is what we find. Next, please. So taking into consideration some of these barriers, which are generic in nature, and it's also quite applicable to SMMEs in the waste sector itself, I think from our personal experience working with SMMEs in the waste sector, what we've found is that the business development support is definitely a key area of intervention that's required. Secondly, business acumen skill sets. So you have SMMEs who set up as directors of their companies, etc., but they don't necessarily, they may not have had the opportunity to actually refine their business acumen skill sets. And this is definitely an area for intervention that we found, not necessarily limited to the waste sector, but across the other sectors as well. Now, in terms of financial stability and the avoidance of bankruptcy, the challenge here has been, firstly, the issue of them having to provide their own cash flow. Secondly, related to finances itself is the access to finances. And we know the situation over and over again wherein SMMEs have been trying to secure finances through loans, etc., but not necessarily able to do so. And this becomes a problem because of the regulatory requirements that they need to have in place in order to ensure that they are able to tap into these resources that are required to get their businesses running and to stabilize the business enterprise itself in the medium to long term. Now, what we've also found is that with startups, you tend to have a challenge. SMMEs or startups or entrepreneurs tend to struggle with translating business ideas into meaningful business enterprises at the end of the day. And lastly, this is something that we've picked up as well, wherein they tend to be more inward rather than outward focused. So I'm just wondering, how is it that we could actually try to demystify the space when working with SMMEs within the sector, across the value chain itself, and within other sectors as well, trying to ensure that their focus can be inward, starting up. However, they need to broaden that scope as they progress with their business operations. Next, please. So what we found with the guideline that we put out 2 years ago on getting entrepreneurs or SMMEs or startups to actually go green, what's holding them back? And I'm not going to necessarily go through the detail on the slide, but just to point out that they tend to identify with technical uncertainty, market uncertainty, policy uncertainty, as well as staff capacity and competencies. So these are some of the areas that could hold them back from going green. And secondly, it's also about the issue of investment. And the third issue that comes in is being able to constantly ensure that they are improving on what they have in place. Sometimes you can set up and then think that, everything's done and dusted and it's going to be business as usual. But that constant reflection and, looking into the business itself and its operations is key for SMMEs to constantly reflect, have a feedback loop, and constantly improve their business processes. Next, please. So the slide basically goes into, what is required for SMMEs to actually navigate the space itself. And as I think Susan posted in the chat just now with regard to the extent of failure rate in terms of SMMEs itself, this is a reality which SMMEs face on a daily basis. And I think as another challenge that came up based on the environmental programs branch working with SMMEs through the expanded public works program, something that has been glaring is that SMMEs struggle to compete, and then the business environment becomes quite hostile for them to actually continue with their operations. So noting that SMMEs are already in a niche itself, it's about navigating that space and how do they do it positively to ensure that at the end of the day, the outcomes and the impacts on their businesses are also in a way able to absorb shocks that may come their way. And we saw this quite glaringly during the COVID lockdown measures that were put in place, where SMMEs were not necessarily able to absorb the shocks that were coming their way in terms of managing their businesses. And many of these SMMEs actually went bust as well. So it's not necessarily limited to the waste sector, but this is across all of the sectors. So the reforms in terms of business operations itself, the business environment itself, and how is it that SMMEs actually can navigate that space is an area that's critical for us in the public sector and also those in the private sector, NGOs and research institutions who tend to provide some perspectives on the challenges and opportunities that SMMEs may have or experience is an area that we have to also provide attention to. Next, please. So this is my last slide, and I've pulled out this illustration from the Pune municipality in India. The reason for it to just demonstrate quickly where the opportunities can come in for SMMEs within the waste sector itself. And the key thing being that there has to be constant improvements that happens along the value chain. It's also applicable to the SMME itself. But I brought in business because the slide didn't initially unpack the business aspects in terms of their waste generation and what happens to managing the waste that business would generate as well. So primarily focusing on the waste picker itself and where the opportunity is, because you can have the establishment of cooperatives or NPOs that could guide it. But it's key to understand the role of associations that actually guide the informal waste picker who may become an SMME, an entrepreneur, and a startup within the sector itself. Secondly, just looking at where SMMEs can get into the space, into the value chain itself. So looking at the blue box, wherein there's opportunity from a logistics perspective where SMMEs can get involved. Secondly, looking at transfer stations in terms of operations, which municipalities can outsource. And I think that whilst we understand that it is a subsidized area, there can be opportunity for differentiation in terms of the business model and business offerings at the end of the day, wherein the value addition can come in. On the material recovery facilities as well, this is another opportunity wherein the Pune model has brought in SMMEs to actually work the material recovery facilities in close cooperation with the municipality itself. So in terms of the infrastructure that's required within the value chain, across the value chain itself, the public sector can play a critical role in that regard in providing the infrastructure that's necessary, providing the open spaces that's required for bulking, for compaction, providing the equipment that's required, etc. So that environment, the broad infrastructure that's required for SMMEs to actually function can be subsidized by the public sector, and then bringing on the SMME to actually work these different areas within the value chain itself, wherein the municipality would need to obviously be contractually obligated to the SMME, the cooperative, or the association, depending on what model the municipality could actually utilize. a key thing that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation was around finances, and the space can be navigated as well. So what India has done is they've set up a credit line for SMMEs. Once they get into the value chain itself, they're able to then access the credit line in order to improve their businesses as they move along. But I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much, Elise. And I can take questions or comments. Thanks.
Thank you. We really appreciate these incredible insights. It's been very, very powerful and a very nice summary of the overall discussion that we had. I'm going to ask for us to, because we've got a couple of speakers, and I think a lot of the picture will become more clear as we go along today with the discussion. Please feel free for any entrepreneurs or people that have questions to put that in the chat so long. And then we're going to just move to our next speaker from the NCPC, that is Julie. We will make sure that we do have a Q&A after this panel, and then we can take all the questions.
Okay, you took me a bit by surprise there. I thought there was still another 2 presentations before me.
Oh, sorry for that.
That's
Are you okay?
Problem at all.
You are okay?
I'll be fine. Let me just find my slides while I.
Yeah. I also, maybe while you are busy, I just want to ask if everybody can see the poll. We ask to succeed in the waste sector. So this is a question which is going to require more of a narrative, qualitative response. If you could maybe look at the room, we want to capture your voices and your opinions. Please take the time to write a narrative while you're listening to the next speaker, and let us know, what do you think is the pain points, and what is, if we're looking at some recommendations and solutions that can the barriers. Please feel free to participate in the poll in the background. And I think Michael and Rizal, let's just keep this open maybe until the end, and then we can go and have a look at some of the responses. Thank you so much. Over to you, Julie.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And there it is. And okay, so I'm going to disclosure, I'm not familiar with Zoom. We use
You're
Teams
doing very well.
here.
You're doing
So
very well.
Okay,
We can
so
see your
it's up and running.
presentation. Yes,
Okay,
you do.
great.
You are winning.
Okay, members, I'm keenly aware that 10 minutes is a very short time to really get across what it is that we do and how we support you. So I'm going to really whiz through everything, and I'm going to sort of open up by saying, my email address is available, the NCPC's website is available. After this is possibly where you'll get more value than in the next sort of 9.5 minutes. So my name is Julie Wells. I'm responsible for operations and communication at the NCPC. Now, I'm not going to use our full name again because it's quite a mouthful, but NCPC stands for National Cleaner Production Center. And a Cleaners Production Center is, we're one of a number of NCPCs set up around the world over the last 20 years in partnership with the United Nations through UNEP and UNIDO. And essentially we've evolved over those years to offer different support services, different approaches based on how the green economy is evolving. But it's our mandate to support South African industry to essentially transition to that green economy that we're all searching for. So our key funder, or our core funder, is Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. But of course, we cut across multiple sectors, and we work with multiple government departments as well as provinces and municipalities. And many of our projects are still funded by the UN. Key to understand about what we do and how we offer it is the fact that we are hosted at the CSR. So we're not a national entity ourselves. We are a program within the CSR. And so we have access to, when we collaborate with, many hundreds of very intelligent scientists and researchers who can lend support to what our agenda is. So I'm just going to scrape the top of the cake, as it were, with what we're going to cover today. But essentially, just if you can in mind that our context is a national context. We don't just focus on one province or one sector, and therefore we can't really, we can't cover absolutely everything, but it's our objective to enable other organizations and share with other organizations whatever we do, so that they can then pay it forward if you like. So our support of industry, and industry covers everything from small businesses right the way through to the really large companies, because you cannot make a difference in resource efficiency, in energy, in water, and in waste management if you're not also dealing with the big boys and girls who make the biggest footprint. So there's a snapshot of what we support the sector with. I want to zoom in on one or two things. Yes, we do a broad range of things, but one or two things we'll touch on as we go through. One of the first ones I want to touch on is the fact that we have a whole host of online tools, videos, and downloadable guides and that kind of thing. They are free, and you can download them and you can give them to whoever you want. They've been paid for by taxpayers' money. They are there to be used, and we are not alone in that. I can off the top of my head, I know that various NBI and TIPS and others have got a lot of tools, and I've been hearing about skills gaps. The amount of knowledge embedded in some of these tools is incredibly important. So I'd encourage the companies represented to consider going to websites like ours and downloading the tools. The other thing that is I want to zoom in is our training courses. So the online tools link is on our website. It's embedded in the presentation, but also I will share it in the chat. And here is a list of all the different training courses that we offer. These have been subsidized either by UNIDO or by DTIC, and we develop new ones every year. We're currently in the process of developing or finalizing our water training, and the next one we're doing is broad waste, and then we're going to focus on various waste streams, including waste, food waste, e-waste, etc., etc. So the beginning of skilling oneself often lies in the resource efficient and cleaner production course. It's a very broad course, and in that one you then get exposure to topics like carbon, like energy, like industrial symbiosis, waste management, energy efficiency, energy management, as well as measurement. So that's the best place to start. I'm going to quickly touch on a couple of I'm going to show these case studies, but I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to touch a couple of ways that we can support small businesses, and we do support small businesses. I want to make it quite clear, though, from the onset that the micro businesses very often spoken about in SMMEs is not really our target. The reason for that is we're considering the size of the country and its industry, we're a pretty small program to be supporting across the value chain. So most of our work lies in small and upwards. So when I say SME, I'm usually talking small and medium. This, for example, is one of the case studies on a sort of following a waste management assessment. We go in and we do assessments. And this company, we identified a whole bunch of things that they could divert. We then connected them with the industrial symbiosis team within the NCPC, who then linked them up with others who could use some of their resources. And this particular company also asked if we could help with energy. We went in and did some energy assessment, helped them improve their energy management, and then linked them up with an incentive program that's run by Gauteng province. We don't know if they're going to run it again, but they ran it over the last 2 years to fund the installation of renewable energy systems, as long as the company put some sort of co-funding in, and Meze Foods did that. It's a really great sort of success story of a company that wants assistance and is going to walk alongside that. Over here, this is the start of many of our SMEs journeys for us. An assessment. We identified it's not massive like what we see in the big plants, but the small things that they can do, the sort of small energy interventions, small water interventions, improving their material flow, which reduces their waste. Those kinds of things can save them enough money to then invest in future interventions. Here we have an example of one of the other ways that the NCPC operates, and I apologize upfront for the typo at the top there. My fingers must have moved way too fast. But the biggest issues we have in the country don't talk about is the confiscated items at customs, at seizures that are done of illicit. What happens to that? And it is a massive opportunity to upcycle and recycle. So DTIC funded a pilot project where the NCPC put out a call for small companies to actually be the ones to reprocess this fabric. Footwear, and looking at food, maybe I'm hungry. Footwear and leather that could then get passed on. This project was a real success, and we're really hoping to be able to run it again. In order to repurpose this fabric, however, we have learned through this process that the material is mixed up with all sorts of other, like the socks were individually wrapped in plastic. So it actually becomes quite an expensive process to separate that. And so there's an opportunity there, and I'm sure we're going to explore it further with policymakers like Janita and others. But also it's something that small businesses can think about is how opportunities in this space to actually help SARS and DTIC to destroy these things in such a way that they can then get, for example, what the one service provider who bought, or one company that bought some of this, which is Konica, they actually put it into car seats. Their company, they sell it onto Feltex after they clean it, and it goes into car seats and other things like that. So rags, that kind of thing. That is what the circular economy is about, and that's what we are helping to enable. We don't necessarily do the nitty-gritties on the ground for everything, but we like to try and do these pilot projects. And the other pilot project that we've been running over the last 2 years is an Intex project that we've been doing with DFFE as well as UNEP. And there you'll see the 3 components, and we've assisted these in textile sector because it was Intex is the textiles, and these companies are now equipped to look at their business in a more circular model and reduce waste. Then I just wanted to point, just before I sort of round off, I wanted to point out 3 or 4 things just to consider, just thoughts I put out there. The one is that the NCPC launched a brand new project last year, which is a circularity in the clothing and textile sector. It is looking at the full production life cycle, looking at pollutants, chemicals, that sort of thing. If you're interested, or if you work in space, please just keep an eye on our website. We'll be sending out calls for various levels of participation. And that is a UN-funded project, so it's intended to really assist the industry. Then I mentioned sector guidelines already. I'm not going to go back to it. But the other thing that needs to happen, if you're working in the reclamation space, if you're working in sending waste along the value chain to become something else, please don't forget that testing is often needed. Now, we use the CSR laboratories where they can. There are many others out there, but one of the things we do with our industrial symbiosis program is that when we find a waste stream, we test it at our CSR to make sure that it's safe to go into whatever bricks, what clothing, etc. And I've already touched on the training, so I don't have to circle back. Just a snapshot then of the industrial symbiosis programs that are run in South Africa. The very opening presentation already mentioned Green Cape. They run the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program, and the NCPC runs all the others. So you'll see that there is an ISP in each province, and our approach is that we partner with the provincial governments in each of those provinces. Some of them are more advanced than others. Further along the chain, that largely depends on the involvement of the province as well as funding. And as you can imagine, the size and the footprint of the province. So we didn't do all at once. We gradually started with Gauteng and rolled them out over the years. The most recent one was the launch in Northwest that took place only last month. So On my last slide is actually something that I also wanted to throw out there. It's a bit of a side curveball, as it were. A lot of the ways that we can actually advance technology and impact in this waste and this micro and small business space is by empowering the young entrepreneurs, those who think out of the box. So the NCBC partners every year with the Ecological Awards to try and encourage this particular sort of avenue for little businesses to put their inventions forward or their projects forward to be recognized and get further media coverage, which often leads to investment. And after this is all over, I encourage you to go and take this last slide of mine, click on the Urban Surfer link. And if you're not already familiar with Urban Surfer, they won the category that we supported, and we're promoting them to DTIC and hoping somebody puts their hands up and says, yes, let's take this to the next level. But they're using smart technology to empower and equip the waste pickers in the Greater Joburg area. And it's a concept that could be rolled out. This is not the only innovation program. Many of you on the call will be familiar with the Clean Tech Innovation Program, run formerly by NCBC, then now it's been run by TIA, funded through the UN. Small businesses can look for these kinds of opportunities to get their leg up to the next rung of the ladder. So in closing, there are our contact details and there we go, it's moving. Now it's gone, okay. Contact details, my personal email address, I can put in the chat if it's necessary, but otherwise the NCBC at CSR comes to my communication team and they will send anything to me that they think I should help with. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. We really appreciate that. And sorry for the moving you up slightly earlier in the program than you anticipated, but it's been very insightful. And yeah, we look forward, if you don't mind, also share some of your slides to some of the SMMEs that would like to maybe revisit some of the programs and case studies. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Then we're going to now give an opportunity to Suzanne and also Aisha. I know that you would be presenting together. So if you are ready, then we're going to welcome you. And then we also want to just encourage, we're keeping the poll open. So for anybody that would like to still participate, there might be, Simon indicated he couldn't submit his response. Sorry about that, Simon, but I'm so glad you were able to copy and paste it into the chat. Maybe that's a good idea for everybody that's participating before you submit. It might be that there was a character word count limitation on the Zoom poll, that limited technology. We really do not want to leave anybody's voice and inputs behind. This is really important for us that this is an inclusive workshop. Every entrepreneur and stakeholders' inputs are very, very welcome and very important. So for those of you who are having maybe the same challenge of the poll, feel free just to copy paste into the chat. And if you feel you want to maybe email it to me, I'll also put my email if you feel more comfortable. I just want to make sure that we capture everything. All right, so there's my email in the chat. If anybody needs to email it, then you're also welcome. All right, so over to you, Aisha and Suzanne.
Hi there, just sort of check that everybody can see the right.
Yes, we can see and we can hear you. Thank you so much. You're good.
Okay. Firstly, thank you so much, Michael and Elise, for organizing and facilitating this focus group. I'm really excited to get into the meat of it after the panel discussion. So I'm here with my colleague Suzanne Kasha, and we're going to speak about leveraging the National Waste Management Strategy for a just transition, focusing in on e-waste specifically and how the micro, small, medium enterprises fall into that sector. So I think quickly I'll just explain what SHRI is. So I work for the South African chapter of the Sustainable Recycling Industries Program that is funded by the Swiss Secretariat of Economic Affairs, which is now implemented by EMPA and the World Resources Forum. So the SHRI program steps in as this platform for kind of global learnings to come together and look at policy, law, norms and standards, auditing professionalized businesses and dealing with the problematic fractions from a kind of triple bottom line approach. So we really do have insights from all of these jurisdictions, Colombia, Ghana, Peru, Egypt, and India, to guide and help us with our local implementation, or national rather. So on the local side, we have myself, Aisha Lotta, and then we have Paul Jones, who is part of LUMEC, and Suzanne Kasha, who is EnviroSense, and we are all guided and supported by the DFFE. Suzanne, would you like to maybe just introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, very quickly. I'm the national coordinator of the SRI project. I'll start this later. That's pretty much everything. Go on.
Thanks. So we'll quickly speak about leveraging opportunities with the National Waste Management Strategy and EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, and the kind of associated documents. We'll also touch on the barriers, opportunities, and drivers within e-waste sector for SMMEs. But I think a lot has already been, it kind of spans and will repeat itself slightly, but we'll keep it condensed just to highlight some of the problems specific to that sector, or waste stream rather, and then speak about the upcoming e-waste policy and norms and standards, and Suzanne will take you through that. So broadly, the problem we face, we being waste electrical and electronic equipment, is that we have this collective dependence on everyday items, which causes significant amount of harm if we do not manage them properly. So, however, this happens at more of the design and management stage, which is a little bit outside of our jurisdiction. And we don't actually, we don't have the industry or the manufacturing process for these products. So we end up dealing with these wastes, but not having a lot of control over them. So it's important to recognize that a lot of this e-waste just goes undocumented. And currently we're sitting at about 82% of our global e-waste going unaccounted for, which is a real crisis, and the cost of doing nothing is really incalculable. But luckily we can calculate the potential. So let's be led by the carrot and not the stick. On the left, you see the potential at the beginning of the life cycle of electronics. This was specified by the DTIC in a 2020 fact sheet. And on the right, we have some figures of the value of the end of life e-waste management. And that was provided by Green Cape. We do have the raw materials, about 90% of the global PMGs, we have them in South Africa. We have the manufacturing capacities and we have the market that can stretch further into Africa. We just need to realize the value of our e-waste, or rather our potential throughout the life cycles. So at the beginning of the product life cycle, actually manufacturing, as well as the landfills. So that's both the actual product as well as the space that product takes up in our landfills unnecessarily. So there is this massive potential. At this life cycle, we have this potential, but it does come with a big bouquet of laws. And we focus on the waste management strategy, but I thought it would be useful to give you a kind of sense of where the power, how the legislative power flows. And it all comes from the supremacy of the Constitution, specifically looking at Section 24, and then a cascade of legal enactments. And at the bottom there, at the kind of straddle, National Waste Management Strategy, and recently in March, the National Household Hazardous Waste Management Strategy that also plays a role in e-waste. So this is a big, complicated map, but we're going to take some time here to focus on what exactly the National Waste Management Strategy is and who plays a key role. And by doing that, you can start sussing out for yourself, in whatever context that you find yourself in as an SMME, how do you leverage those relationships to further kind of negotiate your progress. So the National Waste Management Strategy is a government-wide strategy. It enters at that national level and applies to all organs of state responsible for waste management. It includes the private and civil society. I'm sorry, I'm getting notifications and it is a statutory requirement, and it's a framework and strategy for the implementation of our National Waste Act, so the National Environmental Management Waste Act. In order for us to kind of really see a lot of these stakeholders, I've just highlighted some of the national players of the various spheres of governments. You have national, provincial, and local. So you can have those big bubbles, and they're all in national. You have the DFE, and they're the DEF. Yeah, it's DEF, but it's changed its title. I need to update that diagram. It's been reused slightly. And the role of that public layer is largely a licensing authority. And I think everybody here has highlighted, or at least the predominant highlight, is that this overarching authority in licensing has been a massive hurdle for small operators to enter this space. And hopefully once we present on the norms and standards and the policy, we can see the kinds of things that we're trying to implement at national level to the overall issue. You also see provincial, where you have the responsibility for regulating waste management, largely general, as the hazardous waste applications have to go through the national sphere, as well as having a kind of commenting authority from the provincial environmental authorities. Then you have at the local level, which is more that they have been constitutionally mandated to provide waste collection, removal, storage, and disposal of waste generated by households specifically. And this can also be outsourced, and that's another highlighted issue with regards to procurement. So we can see a lot of these municipalities not necessarily getting involved in hazardous waste, which is where e-waste sits, but it still requires a cooperative governance level with waste generators, waste handlers, households, and recycling industries all working within that local context. So it is important to recognize that all of these things do function together, even though some of our constitutional requirements might not recognize that relationship. So highlighted by the National Waste Management Strategy is the Waste Bureau of South Africa. This is really crucial for recycling sectors, but this bureau needs a significant amount of institutional support. And that is because it's responsible for pushing through EPR programs, and this kind of technical capacity building needs to happen within this bureau. It has been mandated to support and advise the development of industry waste management plans as well, and that happens at the provincial level. So all of these plans need to speak to one another, which can be quite challenging. From a provincial point of view, it's the provincial integrated waste management plans that you see there, kind of spanning national and provincial spheres. And then at the local level, you see the district and local municipalities needing to focus on integrating the informal sector. Sorry. I'm going to quickly skip ahead to the barriers. So the overarching lack of reliable data, that's something that we see throughout industries, and EPR system will hopefully step in and help with that data collection in the field, but it's not necessarily in full force yet. It's very difficult to access some of these online databases. Access to feedstock, similar issues. People don't really want to release their e-waste. There is some sort of perceived value in them. And we see a lot of stockpiling happening at household and state level, actually. Extensive licensing, the opportunities we see tapping into this valuable resources, kind of spoke a bit about that from either side of the value chain. But there is a lot of capacity and interest in moving into more of a regional development. And then when it comes to drivers, we can leverage, we can leverage the e-waste landfill ban that has been in place since 2021. And try to see that as a key drive for diverting this waste. So I think it's just the last point I really want to make about the waste management strategy is that it should be reviewed every 5 years. And that means that next year is kind of its last year for review. This is not going to happen. We've seen it in previous strategies. It's not going to be updated as quickly as we'd like it to. But it shows you how slow the policy machine is. And the collective ownership of everybody here to take this forward and take the strategy and really work it in is probably the only way we're going to see a lot of development happening at that sphere. So yes, I'm going to just hand over to Suzanne now to take us through some of the potential solutions coming from policy and norms and standards.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to very kind of highlight how we translated basically what Aisha has outlined. We have EPR, we have the need for informal sector integration enshrined in the EPR. We have a commitment, to more circular economy based kind of planning. So we have industry project for all the countries that similar outcomes, and one of the outcomes is to develop an adequate policy and legislative framework. So we assisted the DFFE in the establishment of a draft e-waste policy, and that e-waste policy speaks directly also to strengthening SMMEs and the integration of the informal waste sector. Out of those 6 objectives that are in the policy, and you're welcome to contact me if you want to see a copy of the draft. We're expecting this policy draft to be gazetted fairly soon, so you will see it anyway. But out of the 6 objectives, 4 speak directly to either informal sector integration or wider SMME development and creating enabling surroundings for small-scale business development in South Africa. Also, in the objectives enshrined, as well as in the 3, is to develop curriculum that will actually help to upskill people. And you saw in my comments earlier, we need to move away from just get people to collect and perhaps dismantle stuff. I want to see a lot more SMMEs, in the higher value add kind of categories of product innovation, product development, and recovery of functionality when it comes to e-waste. Okay, next. And the norms and standards. This is basically a document that describes, again, normative requirements, how all of the e-waste operators in the South African value chain should behave in accordance to minimum operational and technical requirements, which will become mandatory if the norms and standards are approved. And again, enforcing the need for informal sector integration, we applied our minds how we can actually create a niche for the SOS sector, separation outside of source. That's a term that was coined in the waste picker integration guidelines. And that was one bottleneck that we tried to unblock. The second one is also to provide easier entry level for smaller recyclers. And what we have identified as a key obstacle is that e-waste being hazardous unless it's depolluted is triggering volumes very quickly, and then you require a hazardous waste management license. So what we are trying to do in a way to create awareness and motivation for people to learn, obviously, and legally compliant depollution or decontamination of equipment, so that only the part that contains the hazardous fraction counts towards this trigger volumes. That would enable specifically smaller operators, to fulfill critical functions, not just in dismantling and definitely avoiding cherry picking, but to actually become real service providers for the house, to show that they are actually playing a role in the decontamination, which is also part of the overall objective of the EPR regulation. industry project, also the requirement for SMME development and strengthening. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and we appreciate your inputs also, Aisha. This has been incredibly valuable. I also believe on the policy side, very, very interesting developments. And although you did indicate, Aisha, that that's usually the slower part and it needs to be reviewed every 5 years, I think it's important that the stakeholders in the room take the collective action like you encouraged us all to move this agenda forward. So thank you very much for the insight. So without further delay, we are a little bit pressured for time. I'm going to ask Nicolette to come up next as a speaker. And then after that, we will have an opportunity for Indalu to speak. Asplus is unfortunately not able to join today, but we will make sure we try get access to a presentation, but their website is also incredibly valuable, and you can also send them, apply online and contact them for what you can qualify as a SME. They've got a fantastic service. All right, so over to you, Nicolette. Thank you. And then the poll, sorry, I'm just seeing quickly also the poll, and Michael has just popped up the poll in the background, because we really don't want to leave any entrepreneurs. We are at 37, which is still a good participation. Please stay online, because after this, we will be talking to Indalu about their business development support services for entrepreneurs in the waste sector. And then we're also going to hear from 3 entrepreneurs that would like to share their stories and where they stuck and give us really good insights that other people could relate to in the room. So the poll at the moment is just before anybody leaves or have to run for another meeting, I think it's important that we ask, how confident are you looking at the opportunities for SMMEs in the waste sector? And it seems that 72% of the participants in the room are feeling very, very positive. So that is about 13 out of 18 participants who took the poll. There's a few that's still negative, and there's quite a few, 22%, that's very unsure. So I think this gives us also a good indication that maybe better visibility about the initiatives and the programs and opportunities is really important. All right, sorry, Nicolette, for that interruption. I'll hand over to you now.
No problem. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Nicolette Boyens, and I will say up front that I'm not a waste specialist. I am an enterprise development specialist, specifically focusing on local economic development and very definitely within the micro enterprise field. In other words, our objective is to work with micro entrepreneurs and then to grow them into small businesses. Today, I'm going to be sharing, you can move the slide on, I'm going to be sharing a case study with you of a particular project which I think might be helpful to entrepreneurs. Particularly entrepreneurs that fall within the micro enterprise category, community-based people, waste pickers, survivalists, youth, women. I honestly believe that that is where the biggest economic crisis is in South Africa, and naturally our focus is there. I was contracted by Visit Stellenbosch in 2019, which is the destination marketing organization for the town of Stellenbosch, which is mandated and supported by the Stellenbosch municipality and also funded. And we have embarked on a range of projects and social businesses in order to develop the economy within the town. And the Bags for Bread project obviously falls within the category of the waste economy, if I can call it like that. And essentially, this project has been extremely successful, is at a place of sustainability, and I believe that we can probably learn a bit from this. Now, I do want to also feature another project, if we do have time, that does not fall in the waste sector, but works on the same principles. So I'll get started. Bags for Bread essentially is a women-led community-based social enterprise, which is based in Kayamandi. Kayamandi is a township situated just outside of Stellenbosch. It was founded by Visit Stellenbosch, as I mentioned, the destination marketing organization. Plastic shopping bags are crocheted into products that are wholesaled and retailed to the tourism and conferencing sector. So MICE, as the sector is called, includes meetings, incentives, conferences, and events, and then naturally, tourism, retail, curio outlets has also shown to be a great market for us. So currently there's 10 women producers. So these women are independent entrepreneurs which operate as micro enterprises. They then in turn have sub-producers that they either pay on an employment basis or alternatively also on the same basis of independent producers. Move on to the next slide. Just a few pick products. Okay. Just a quick look at what that is. So it's branded and there's a variety of products, which essentially includes mostly items for the conferencing in. You can move on. Okay, so what do we learn from this? So I think that it's really important to integrate whatever ambition there is in the waste sector, enterprise development and local development. There is obviously a lot of enterprise development structures and systems and models in place. So this particular model firstly works and operates as a social business. So what that means is that it's a 70-30 split where producers are paid 70% of all income, 30% is held for sustainability and services and marketing and all sorts of things. Then very important in any kind of enterprise, regardless of whatever sector it is in, is to identify markets. So when we speak of market access, and honestly, market access, we have found throughout our economic development work, market access is often the biggest challenge, especially for emerging community-based entrepreneurs. So identify a market is really the very first step in building any kind of business. So in this case, we realized that the events sector is a very, very wide sector. They have a very big ambition to be perceived or in fact to be more ecologically conscious. And so there's a great appetite for products that are recycled and have a green footprint. So once, I would imagine the first step for us really was we identified possibility financially. So absolutely no business can thrive if there's no market. The next thing is product design. So fit for purpose and fit for market. I think this is one of the biggest challenges in the waste economy. And what is required is product innovation. So really how waste translates back to a product is a big challenge. And we settled on lanyards, conference bags, and then bags for water bottles and bags for wine bottles. So one of our stakeholders is the Stellenbosch wine routes, and obviously the amount of wine that is gifted, the amount of wine that is sold. So we've been able to make back-to-back deals that a lot of the wine that is specially gifted is gifted in these crocheted bags. And then resources. So availability of raw product. In our case, and I think it's the case in most waste situations, the raw product is free or at least very inexpensive, which offers a fantastic business proposition. But then production capability, space, labor, and funding, these are obviously huge challenges and would need some sort of inputs in order to develop micro enterprises. So I'll speak a bit more about that in a moment. Training and quality control are found to be extremely important, and then marketing. So we've produced really well-composed marketing material. There is a link in the chat, and it can link for presentation as well for those that want to have a look. And then marketing services, in other words, how the products are sold. So we opted for wholesaling, which is a much more efficient way to move products. So, and of course, the event sector leads itself to wholesaling because there's large numbers of people that attend events, but we also retail in the sector type of shop, in the tourism type of shops, curios specifically. So if we go to market access specifically, so I believe that incubating micro enterprises such as Bags to Bread really should be a combined effort, should be sector-based. So I found that the most successful incubations, the most successful enterprise development projects that I've seen has buy-in from sector. In other words, formal business. The next thing is there needs to be access, network, and influence. Those are marketing basics. So again, within this model of attracting sector support, access and networks are created. A very valuable point is motivation. So one of the points that I will touch on later is that there really is a lack in South Africa of understanding the value of the circular economy. In other words, sustainability as a principle, recycling as a principle. Organizations really need to be motivated to support such projects. Finally, partnerships. So in the case of this particular project, the partners are Visit Stellenbosch, which is the tourism DMO, the Cape Winelands District Municipality, which has funded the startup, Stellenbosch Municipality that is funded or partially funded, Stellenbosch University, which has a huge events section called Kiko, and then a non-profit which has overseen the business development side of things. And then finally, as I said, marketing resources. So in this case, marketing falls within the Visit Stellenbosch marketing services and department. You can move on. So really what I feel I can add to this is, and I've mentioned this before, the value of the circular economy has to be promoted within the CSI development and civil society framework, and the value that waste has as a business component, as a raw product, I think really hasn't penetrated the mainstream of development-minded organizations and nonprofits. Then I think industry must be motivated and compelled to prioritize waste-based economic development. So really, I'm referring to corporate social investment. One of the factors that keep coming up is investment funding. So there is a very great amount of funding available in South Africa, and particularly in Europe, for waste-based economic development. And I think how this funding is channeled to kickstart businesses in the waste sector is really what we should be talking about. Finally, nonprofit organizations need to be educated on economic development models, and particularly in the waste sector. There's 266,000 nonprofits in South Africa, and really a lot of this component of economic development should fall within the nonprofit sector. Nonprofits are also able to channel investment, in other words, funding, to invest in small waste-based enterprises. Marketing and product development, training, obviously these are kind of business incubation type aspects, again, very much within the nonprofit sector. And then finally, industry should also assist with market access through integrated CSI. So integrated CSI really is that how these products are sold and marketed, but feed over to their marketing divisions, which is really what happened in the case at Stellenbosch. So they have integrated these two components, which at the end of the day cracks the nut in terms of market access. But really, at the end of the day, nonprofits should take the lead in waste-based economic development, particularly where it pertains to community-based and emerging really, really small and micro enterprises. You can move on. I am running out of time, so I'm not going to say too much about this. You can maybe just go on to the next slide. This particular slide is a very similar model to the Bags for Bread model, but in township tourism. And I think really what I want to illustrate here is that This type of overarching social enterprise model has a great ripple effect in communities. So you'll see that, first of all, formal industry commitment is non-negotiable. Wholesale and direct sales usually forms part of this commitment from an overarching industry body or a business, corporate CSI. But once and this is what we found with these kind of models, is that once they start evolving, there's secondary trading that starts happening, and so primary and secondary job creation. In this particular case of Township and Village, which is a tourism social enterprise based on the same model, we currently have 60 people benefiting from this model and growing. This, by the way, is also a completely sustainable, self-sustainable business. I'm going to leave it there. We can go to the last slide and I'll just wrap up. These are the partners in the Bags to Bread project. And to summarize, really, I think that the manner in which government, civil society, and industry can work together to create incubation channels for the waste economy, I would imagine, is the best solution for market access and moving forward, particularly as it pertains to micro enterprises. Thank you very much. That's all from me.
Nicolette, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's incredible. I think your points that you mentioned in terms of sustainable models, the integration of NGOs, I think it's so important strategically with CSI initiatives. But yeah, it's so refreshing to see that there is a social enterprise model that works. It's self-sustaining, the primary, like you said, and the secondary job creation. This is fantastic. I know there's so much happening in Stellenbosch also on the iSolar with the renewable energy and community initiatives. It's really, really refreshing to get this part of the waste sector. So thank you for your time and for sharing your model and the access to market. It's really been beautiful. We look forward to, if you don't mind, share your slides also with the participants. And we're going to be doing a workshop report. So I'm now going to welcome Shamila from Indalo Initiative. And Shamila, if you have 10 minutes, we're going to then hand over to our SMME speakers, which also would like to have 10 minutes each. And then we will wrap up the discussion for the day. So I'd encourage, we are dropping slightly in numbers. I hope Indalo is going to give an energized room a bit, because they are doing amazing work. I love the work, Shamila, that you and Rest and your team is doing and changing our country in the just transition in eco-inclusive entrepreneurship. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Elise. Hi, everyone. I'm Shamla Reed, and I'm the Senior Projects Coordinator at Indalo. Let me just adjust my screen. Thank you. I don't have a presentation, and I'll speak very quickly because I also know that we don't have much time, and we still want the SMMEs to be speaking as well. So I'll run through, and I'll probably skip through the things that I wanted to talk about that a lot of other people have touched on already. So just quickly about Indalo Inclusive. We are a non-for-profit company, and we support green and inclusive entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs that has a green business model, but also looks at the social and economic benefits as well. So we have a developmental approach to our work, and we predominantly work in a particular niche, and that is the rural and township areas in South Africa. And we have a strong focus on supporting women and youth-led initiatives. To date, we have supported nearly 1,000 enterprises from ideation stage. So when an entrepreneur just has an idea and wants to start something, or an emerging entrepreneur in that case, up until accelerator phase. We also have a replication incubation model for enterprises that has a viable proof of concept and are now looking to scale and replicate their business. So also just to give you a sense of the kind of entrepreneurs that we support, it's across the green economy sectors. Then very quickly, in terms of the work that we do on the just transition, particularly enterprise development within the context of the just transition, Elise did speak to this at the beginning when she introduced Indalo, that our work predominantly focuses on, or is located in Mpumalanga and Limpopo province, and we take the position that enterprise development is a viable vehicle for South Africa's climate change and development imperatives. And especially be addressing our triple bottom challenges of high poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Okay, so what I won't touch a lot on the work that we do there, but what I can say is that some of the key lessons that we've learned implementing just transition interventions, and this is done with existing and emerging enterprises, but also with individual and community-based enterprises, particularly those residing in or operating in the coal value chains in Mpumalanga and Limpopo. So the lessons that we've learned from that is that we really need to be flexible in terms of our incubation program. And adapt our incubation program adapted and tailored based on the needs of the community that we are operating in. So for example, a simple way that we could potentially do that is perhaps we usually use an e-learning platform for our online applications, and in some cases we'll then have to adapt that system, and then if the community calls for it or we see there's a need, we then allow communities to submit the applications, or enterprises to come mother tongue as well. So just to give you an example, in terms of the waste sector enterprises, let's go, yeah. So just to give you a sense of the sector enterprise that has applied for our projects or our goals, till date. So we've been officially established in 2017. A large number of those enterprises are buyback centers. And we often encourage them to also go into opportunities of upscaling so they can buy products. We also see that these buyback centers add elements of the social elements into the business model. So some of them would work with informal waste pickers, and some of them would also have education programs or waste management education programs with learners and students, as well as community members. Then on the other hand, we also have a lot, and we're seeing this as something that is emerging now, and I think this is because climate change, the green economy is gaining traction. We have a lot of people now, a lot of enterprises using waste as a raw material to develop the products. So for 1 year is used cooking oil from households to develop clean products. Another enterprise within that coal value chain is using sludge to develop bricks. Then on other examples, we could also be some of our enterprises are using AI to collect, working closely with municipalities in terms of that data collection on waste. So I know that was out earlier as well. And so, yeah, but in these cases, these are often where entrepreneurs also experience technology challenges, and I don't think I'll delve into that too much, but yeah, so let me just get back to my notes. Okay, oh yes, the other thing I wanted to mention was that even though we have entrepreneurs that are not particularly in the waste sector, we're seeing that a lot of entrepreneurs are also integrating waste management approaches within their business model. So be it water purification, be it the agricultural sector. So a lot of people are now sort of owning the concept or the principle of, the circular economy as well. I think what our waste and also enterprises in general do find challenging at the moment is identifying and utilizing sustainable packaging. And while that is a challenge, it also presents an opportunity, especially for research. Yeah. So that's where I'll go quickly. I don't think I'll touch on technological barriers, but what I can say is that a lot of these green businesses are novel in nature. They are complex and they're not very well understood. And so a lot of time is gone into testing these, time and resources is going into testing their innovations, which can be what we are seeing, and I'm glad that NCPC is here because I know they work quite closely with some of the entrepreneurs that we support, but also in general to support these entrepreneurs to test their ideas and also allow them to use their platforms for demonstration sites. And then just to kind of share echo the sentiments shared by other people about the challenges our SMMEs are facing in terms of establishing and maintaining M&E systems. And we know data is critical to make the case for the innovation, but also to attract additional financing, especially climate financing. So how are we supporting our entrepreneurs? Let's talk about our incubation model. So like I said, Indalo supports entrepreneurs from ideation, innovation, growth, acceleration phase, and then we also have a replication program. So we believe that entrepreneurs requires a basket of tools to actually thrive, and that is what we offer them. So we provide them with technical support, financial support in the form of grants, market access, linkages to market access, but as well as linkages to alternative financing and partners. So in terms of the technical support that we offer business development support. We also couple that with accredited new venture creation training, depending on the project, but especially with just transition projects, because our BDS support is not accredited, but NVC is accredited. So just in terms of sort of the upskilling and reskilling elements of the just transition. Then we also have training on climate change and also on ESG. So it's particularly tailored for small businesses. So environmental, social, and governance, and how that aligns with small businesses and access financing in that regard. We also provide them with one-on-one mentorship in terms of the technical support that we offer. And so, yes, for the financial support, like I said, in grants, and they can range from, you know, let me say 20,000 Rand at ideation to 250,000 Rand at accelerator phase. It really depends on the project by project basis and the level of the incubation program. And then in terms of market access, the previous speaker spoke about this quite a bit, and I think other people also touched on this. And before I go to market access, one thing that I must mention is that we often seen with incubation programs that technical support is offered, but what we've seen in our experience that entrepreneurs actually need financial support, and especially small businesses, in the form of grants that can help them realize their ideas, but also grow their business. Yeah, they can't really put the technical support into action without the financial support that accompanies that. Market access, so some things that we would usually do in this, because we know it's a challenge for small businesses to access markets, so we would usually link different small businesses up with a similar business model, and then they would collectively supply one big organization or one individual. So we've done this in a couple of instances. And then lastly, like I said, linkages to additional funding. So our thinking is always, how do we continue to support our entrepreneurs beyond the project life cycle that we currently have with them or the cohort? And so showcasing is definitely one of the things that we do. So we have an annual event, our Indalo Symposium, and I'll pop a link into that because it's actually happening in May this year, where our entrepreneurs exhibit their innovations. And last year we done really well in terms of a lot of entrepreneurs coming up and saying, this organization or this financial institution, I'm actually working with them now and they are interested in sponsoring us further. And then also linking them to other funders, so your IDCs and your SAB foundations as an example. Yeah, so let me see. Yeah, I think that's it from me. And then just in terms of, for the entrepreneurs in the room, in terms of how they can be supported through an Indalo program, we have our programs is on a project by project basis. So it's not like you can just contact us and say, okay, I need support with this, and we can offer it. We usually send out a call, and you can check out our social media sites as well as our website, and I'll drop the links for those calls. I know we have open calls at the moment, and some calls are targeted at specific communities or provinces, and some calls are open across South Africa. So you can check that out and then apply when there's a call open. It's also at different levels. And then also, like I said, you can attend our Indalo Symposium. We do have a very exciting financial initiative that we are launching, which might be of interest to SMMEs, and that will take place on the 14th to the 15th of May in Pretoria at the CSRI building. And then I'll just drop that links in the chat. So much.
Thank you so much. It's been incredible, Shamila, to just hear Indalo's full offering. I really, I've seen in our research, you know, as an incubator service, you are a 360 one house offering the finance, the access to market, the skills development, in all the support. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to comment in too much more detail, but we look forward to receive the links. Also, for everybody in the room, we are slightly behind. We really want the entrepreneurs to each have 10 minutes, but we're also going to produce a video of this workshop and that we will put on the TIPS website, and we'll also put it on our YouTube from TIPS, because it's valuable to extend it to broader audiences, because it's been such a rich understanding of all the initiatives happening within the ecosystem to support entrepreneurs in the waste sector. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Guria Roma. If you can please come in, and we've invited her specifically because she's a female-owned entrepreneur who's quite established in her career with plenty of skills and work experience, but she's got a very unique circular economy technology. And because we haven't had a lot of time today to speak about support for technology development and looking at the R&D needs in the sector, it's been very important to hear from her what she is struggling with on a day-to-day basis. And after that, we're going to be asking Nitabi Singh. Nitabi Singh will be talking to us. She's really hitting the market. She's even looking at exports to Germany and hitting the European industry. You know, she's been doing great in launching, getting a facility access. So please, if I can just encourage everybody in the room, we're still 35 participants. We've dropped slightly. But please stay tuned to hear from these enterprises, because their stories are very unique, and it will give you a very good understanding of putting yourself in the shoe of an entrepreneur that is active and trying to pursue opportunities in the waste sector. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Guria Ramo.
Hi, everyone. I'm just trying to share my screen. I can see myself, but I don't know if I'm sharing.
Now you
my
are
screen.
sharing. You are sharing, and everything is working very well.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Right. So yes, I'm a female-led organization, and that is why I'm here today. And I want to share with you some of the issues I have specifically in raising funding and receiving the funding. So let me see if I can forward here. I don't see I'm in presentation mode.
Yeah, you can maybe try from beginning. Do you want to put from the, yeah, there you go. And you should be able to
There
click.
we go.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, so I make an artisanal recycled textile. And what that means is I take materials that's no longer wanted, I turn it back into a fiber, and I then needle felt it back into a non-woven. So it's the same tech that we use for underfelt. I just make a sexy upper felt, if that is a word. And I started with this to explain and show how we can modernize the recycling machinery to incorporate the waste workers who we know normally just works with hand held, items, and how can we enable them? So what I'm doing in my organization is to develop these manufacturing equipment. But they're specifically designed for smaller volumes, smaller spaces, smaller, available, funds to support the resource efficiency around recycling at source. Very, very important. We can also, through that, enable manufacturing as a service to also help, again, the informal waste worker to enter into the formal economy. We are in feasibility assessment stage. We have a working solution. We have working materials. You can see there on the right-hand side. We've had some sales, but most of my R&D has been funded. As you can see, I'm not a youngster. I worked in IT for about 30 years. I've delivered very large IT solutions to the banks and so on. So I'm very new in the circular economy space, new in the waste space, new in the textile space, although I've been sewing since I was a youngster, new in the social enterprise development space. So lots of news for me, but I do come with a lot of life experience and work experience. So yes, it's new for me to navigate this, but I do believe that I'm navigating it fairly, fast. I'll go through all the funds that I've acquired in the meantime, but let me just show you my little roadmap. Why are you not moving forward? Oh, there we go. So yeah, that is my roadmap. That is where I am. I'm in year 4, which is, I'm still here, even if it was very, very, very hard. I started back in 2020 with online secondhand sales and realized very, very fast that this is not going to work. We do not have the labels and the vintage. But looking at the waste that I to recycle and working in IT and in engineering, I saw the opportunity to go and look at old machinery or artisanal machines and their value to enable the artisanal recycler. So I bought this needle felting machine. It came in from the United States and it was designed to work with wool. I reckon, well, wool is a fiber. This waste material is a fiber. It has to work. I must make it work. And yeah, it took me 2 years to make it work, to arrive at a point where I had a material that worked. And at this point, I was selling some wall art. I sold at art exhibitions, some accessories. And at this point, thought, you know what, I don't want to build a lifestyle organization. I'm doing this for the system's impact that it has. So towards the end of 2022, I looked at working with the industry to assess what are the larger applications for what I'm working on. At the end of the day, it's still a numbers game. Even though we're trying to get more entrepreneurs to eat smaller amounts, it is still, there's a volume that needs to move through the system, and we need to enable the entire system to eat what they are able to eat in a way that what they then send on is actually useful in the next stage. So at this point, I realized for what is available, the opportunities available, and it's really in the housing sector, I will need funding, I will need help. It's beyond what I'm able to do. So in April last year, I set out to start wrapping my mind around what does fundraising look like. I mean, that is a job on its own. And I don't think I've done too bad for a year. I've been successful in the Department of Science and Innovation. They put out a call for Circular Economy Demonstration Fund that allows an innovator with a solution. So the solution must be available to implement it in industry and see what is the impact. How will this help? And I partnered here with CPUT and UP to effect this, this implementation. That is the big one. It's worth about 3 million rand. I also was accepted into the Future Females Circular Economy Accelerator Program. And who is my market? Who am I really helping here, and how am I helping them? The CDI also put out a call end of last year for small entrepreneurs who need to sell and need assistance with access to market, but also just navigating the sales space. And I think especially for us who look at the, the IT aspect of it and the, the engineering aspect of the solution, sales and marketing is not our forte. So I've also been successful in that. And then TIA put out a call also for assistance with access to, designers and that sort of thing. So I applied for that fund end of last year, specifically to get design input for the the recycling that I need to do from sourcing to get the material in a form that I can quickly do the refiberization. And then after I use my needle, punching machine to do the refinement of that once the material is then done and needs to go into the, the retail space. They came back and said, yes and no. No, they can't help me because my need exceeds what they're offering. But it was awesome that they referred it. So they saw the value in what I wanted to do. So even though they're not able to help me because, well, they reckon that I need something like 2 million and not the 200K that they're offering, they did not say no. So overall, I think for the year, I've had some success, but I hit a wall solidly. I have two major things that I need to overcome for me to be able to continue. So I've literally had to put the balls down. So I'm one of those entrepreneurs that even 4 years in, R500,000 of my own savings in, I cannot continue because the system, the ecosystem is not supporting me. So how is it not supporting me? Let me just, my screen is not going forward. Let me try again. Is it changing on your side? Because it's not changing on my side.
Not yet, but you're welcome to close and open again if you want to, or you can just start talking. I know these slides are very helpful, but yeah, there we go. It just took a while. This is the good stuff. Thank you. We want to get to these barriers. Thank you.
Let's hope it holds. So the barriers. The first hurdle is I've got this 3 million rand fund. I'm not getting all of it because, well, half of it needs to go to the institutions. But this fund, although it has been allocated, and I'm talking back June last year when I applied for it, and it's still not available. The money's not been paid out. But what I want to highlight here is this is the one major one that I need to, to handle, but all the others are having similar issues. So overall, funds are available. If you know how to navigate the space, you are able to ask for the money and, submit all the information that they need. The funds are available, but they do not cover what we need. The thing is, you cannot solve world hunger if you are hungry. And a lot of these don't cover overhead. Some of them say so in so many words. We will fund access to knowledge. We will fund access to a machine or some operations if you can show the ROI. Now, for circular economy and waste management, we know we are nowhere near the good ROI. It is just not there yet. So I think there's a bit of a misnomer that the people who work in the waste sector and in, do this because of altruistic reasons or because for the love of it, we live on love and water. We also need a living wage, and that is not available. Then also access to specialist assistance. And here I'm speaking specifically to financial and new economics modeling. If we want to get to net zero, we cannot continue to measure everything we do against the economic models as we know it now. It will need funding to make it acceptable. It's going to need a lot of people in the industry, and I want to almost say, if I can put my my devil's hat on, to fund a more expensive raw material entering our retail space. We may need to go to the board and say to the board, those fat salaries you receive at the end of the month, we're going to halve that because we need that money to fund a more expensive material. So we need to do that modeling. We need to show what does this move to net zero look like implemented. And I guess there I have the advantage of having implemented so many solutions. I understand what it takes from where we are to where we need to go. How do we show this in bite sizes that allows us to see the effects? I don't have access to that knowledge to help me to do it. And this is not something that you can mentor. It's not something you can say to somebody, sit here, they're going to show you how to do it. This is a science on its own that I need somebody next to me that I can explain the context, and they know the economics and where to get the data and which measures to use. The access to the funds, once you have identified them, it's easy to navigate them, but they are still limited, because for what we're doing and where we are with our solutions, we cannot have loans because we don't have the numbers. You cannot ask somebody who's interested in VC. It's not the VC space. So it's literally non-repayable funding, and that is very limited, especially if they then say, well, no salaries, no this, no that. We don't have access to markets, to maker spaces without having formal institutional funding. So I can't just walk into a university and say, help me with this. It's just not an option. And then, yeah, as I said, earlier on, there's committed funding, but it's not coming out as it was supposed to. There were dates, there was a plan, there was milestone payments, there were deliverables, and these things just don't come. So now here I am, I've got multiple ways to fund this. I have these balls in the air, and then a fund that was supposed to land doesn't land, but that ball is. And how do I continue to play if I don't have my own money to compensate for the fact that I haven't received what I was supposed to? The funds also initially appear that they're going to support you. And then as you go in, you realize, but hold on, it is not. And it's not that they change scope. I think something I realized is 6 months or a year in an entrepreneur's life is a long time. We are not who we were 6 months or a year ago. So continuing on a 12 or 18 month plan may not be as feasible, because at some point this thing needs to remain aligned. Some of the funds is very small, and you get to a point where the overhead to on month by month do the admin and the feedback and the mentor sessions for an amount as little as 500 Rand. You start asking, is this what I should be doing? And then obviously whatever we make needs to compete. It needs to be acceptable in the market in terms of the standards, but also you're competing with a virgin option that is dirt cheap. I don't know if you guys have seen what's happening with Temu and Shein. I mean, how do we compete? So yeah, so that is external. There's maybe a lot more, but I thought those were the highlights for now. Internal barriers, I think also because I've got lots of work experience, I'm able to navigate my own finances and HR and those things. Just some learning for me, accessing a big fund raises hidden expenses that you're not aware of until you slap bang in the middle of it. So the one fund being over R1 million, obviously I need to have VAT. To register for VAT is not easy, and there's a number to it. Accounting, software. When you are a small entrepreneur, you can work with Excel. The moment you have a large fund or multiple funds, these funders want to see management accounts, and you can't do that in Excel. So even though I only pay like 600 Rand for this, and I was fortunate because of IT, I have implemented an ERP before, so I could do my own, my implementation. It's still 600 Rand a month. That is a recurring expense that I don't have the money for. It needs to come from somewhere. Funding applications are also just extremely burdensome. And I know we've said this, it's a full-time job to follow up, to redo things in another format. It is a pain in the behind, and it holds you back from doing the stuff that you should be doing. How we fix that, how we get the capacity to help with that, I'm not 100% certain. And then the last one, and I almost want to say that this is maybe even an external one. SMMEs don't come with in-house lawyers and accountants. And this is very important when you want to access a fund. It's not only at the time when you negotiate. Right up front, you need to decide, one, is this for you? Is there an IP issue? Could there be an IP issue? tax implications. Is there funding that I need to add in right at the start to say, you know what, I'm going to have this overheads and we need to add that in? You don't know these things until you're right at the end where you need to sign, and then you're being a bit bullied because you're going to a meeting where you arrive on your own. And the universities and the other institutions arrive with their lawyers and their accountants and everyone. So it's a bit intimidating, but I think also it puts the SME almost like, sign this if you want them. Not always helping. So yeah, I think that in a nutshell, I could probably go on forever, but yes, I am at a rote stop at the moment. I need to resolve those two things. My funding has to get paid in. And secondly, I need help with the modeling. I'm not going to be able to move ahead if I don't understand the models and the numbers.
So much. I'm sorry to cut you there. It's been incredibly valuable, your insights. And, you know, I think what's important about your case study is that you are one of the very few entrepreneurs who's actually managed to get access to a circular economy, waste-related technology development fund. But it doesn't mean if the fund is out there, it's easy to actually participate in the fund, and it can also kill a business. So I think it's important. I'm sorry, my internet is dropping a bit, and that's why I wanted this reality check today for the other entrepreneurs in the room and the ecosystem players to say that even if the research of tips, we can't just say that these funds exist. We need to look at the eligibility criteria, how the funds are designed to actually meet the demand of the entrepreneur and their capabilities. If there's accounting and legal and IP and contracting, how can the entrepreneur actually manage and fulfill the fund terms? And also, if it doesn't come with a feasibility expert and the technical expert that the entrepreneur needs. So these are some of the inputs to give the audience today just ideas of how deep we are drilling down to look at the barriers that is very real and the recommendations we'd like to make. So we're not going to be able today to go to recommendations and solutions, but we are going to invite everybody from this workshop, our waste workshop and our water workshop, to participate on 31st of July in a live event in Pretoria. We will send a communication through where we're going to be presenting some solutions, and we also want the participants and stakeholders to input their thoughts before we go into a formal policy brief. I'm going to ask Ntabi Singh now to come up, and I'm sorry for the delay. For those who need to run, I also want to let you know that we will be recording this video and do a post-production on our YouTube link for Tips channel, and we will make it available for everybody. It might take a few weeks, but it's valuable if you've missed anything to go back to all of the information. We would like to share it with you. So over to you, Ntabi Singh, and I'm so sorry for this incredible delay. Please, we still have 29 people in the room, which is really good. Please hang on to listen to Ntabi Singh's story, because she's a bit further down the line with her business. And I think she's had amazing breakthroughs, which we can end this workshop on quite a positive note. Thank you. Over to you, Ntabi Singh.
Thank you very much, Elise, and good afternoon, everyone. And I appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to briefly share about my business and my journey. So our business is called Nutrinta. We are a circular economy accredited food and bev manufacturing business. And alongside the people who helped me in a business, we are 7 in total, and 4 of them are youth and majority is women. So basically how we started our business, it was during COVID-19 pandemic. It's what brought an opportunity for us to solve the problems that were faced by our people. And of which most of our products are CMOS based. So I just brought in just a little pack here to show you. This is how it looks like, and it's a waste from the ocean. And this is amazing. Basically what it does is it helps to clear mucus from your chest and also regenerate body cells. And there's a lot of other more benefits, including the 92 minerals that you benefit out of the 102 that our need. So part of our journey, just giving you overview, we've had great support and through programs. Number one, Future Female Business School, so sponsored by the Finlands, and I've had an opportunity to have Elise as a coach there, and it's been phenomenal. And I must say that it has added grand value to where we are today. And we are part of the Wakanda Food and Bev Manufacturing. It's called Food Premier Program, and that is an incubator. We came to this incubator when we started producing our smoothies. And basically, I was working from home, doing my admin and having to the premises and to then manufacture our product. And it's been incredible how things have been going, of which I will say that you know, the evidence is based on numbers, and to the point whereby now we are actually having our own offices and officially launching on the 26th, which is this Friday, and opening our doors for the public to come in and purchase from us as well. So other programs that I've been part of, it's their Grasa Machel Woman Creating Wealth with the IDC. And I'm grateful that I finished that now. We are going to graduate next month, and that has been incredible. It has also helped me to understand where to from here. And in terms of understanding my numbers, my projections, so for the next 3 years, I have a clear vision of where we will take Nutrinta to the next level. Also had a grand opportunity with the DTI and the GIZ, and a program sponsored by the German government, and whereby I went to Germany and spent 2 weeks there introducing our product and learned a lot in terms of what a palate appeals to in South Africa and what the European people, you know, are accustomed to. It's two different things, of which it was very exciting. Then we launched our flavored SMMEs gels that are infused with the cherry puree, and it's a great antioxidant, and the market is receiving it very well. So we're part of also a food and bev SETA packaging program, and the support just goes on and on. So when we speak of challenges, the kind of challenges that we've had, when we look at the ingredients like SMMEs, okay, I must say that I can't say it's expensive, it's quite affordable for everyone. So we don't have to put huge margins on our product, but what we're aiming at is volumes. And then you have then another product that we're manufacturing, which is a hair product. It's very good. We have 10 distributors who are distributing our product, and it's been doing very well in the market, boosting our turnover. And now you find that you want to produce, you know, an upgrade to that product. And when you look for a key ingredient and you find that is expensive, I've reached out to a laboratory to look for one specific herb, and for hair growth it's called Capilla longa, and they told us that it's 11,000 per kilogram, of which then you ask yourself, how much then am I going to be selling my product to? Is it still going to be affordable in a market or not, you know? And another thing, very, very important, as an eco-friendly business, would love to make use of affordable packaging is very important, and would love to work with a package production company that produces eco-friendly packaging. And we are still searching in the market to find an affordable one, and that would actually help us a lot, because of the certain SDGs that we're observing as a business. So I would like some recommendation, if any, can be dropped in the chat. I'd really appreciate that. Then in terms of the access to manufacturing premises, it is challenging because currently, as we are part of the Wakanda Foodpreneur program, we are in a space whereby we're sharing with other people, then we have to control allergens, and you have to wait for the one that is manufacturing a product different from yours. And for instance, they're baking, they're using flour, they have to open doors, and every time is costing us in terms of deep cleansing the manufacturing premises, of which it's not our premises, but we are grateful to actually utilize that space. And having to overspend on little things like that and can actually affect our turnover at the end of the day, or our profits rather. So that is a big challenge that we are facing as a business. And when it comes to technology, when you travel, you go to Europe, and you look at the kind of support that the government pays attention to SMMEs, including the small family businesses, and you look at the kind of technology that they are using is one that is used by big companies in South Africa. And there's so much, differences, and in terms of expectations as well, when people from international Europe, they looking at certain number of volumes, and you find that you can't produce the similar number of volumes compared to your competitor in EU, because of the kind of manufacturing equipment. So that is one of the challenges. And recently we were invited to apply for an export market program. It's not a program, it's an expo that is in the US, in New York. It's called Summer Expo. And when we expressed interest, and they asked us in terms of volume, at the moment our capacity is 5,000 units per day, and we could not access that opportunity. We were told that US has 336 million people, like the market is that, and what you're producing is not good enough for buyers there. They love your product, and please scale up. We're looking forward for you to apply again next year. So that is a challenge for me, and I would like to get to the point whereby, as a business, we build the kind of premises that a circular economy focused, and be able to produce and meet the expectations internationally. So another very recent challenge that we are facing with a distributor in Germany. They love our product, they want our product. They say, we don't want your raw product, of which is easy for me to just export like that. They want our processed product. And when you look at what it takes to be able to get into the retailers there, including here, we need to pay for shelving. So distribution cost, just to pay the distribution agents, it's quite expensive, I must say. And that is a challenge I'm still to overcome as a business. And when it comes to certification of products, I mean, every country has different standards. One way or the other, we need to adhere to those standards. And I cannot say that is a challenge per se, because we have to be compliant at the end of the day. We need to meet what the client needs and be able to supply them. So it's a process that each and every entrepreneur needs to be open-minded to, not to see it as a red tape, but to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And once you're into a specific market, and then, I can't say the sky is the limit, it's like you just grow. There's nothing that's going to keep you from basically growing as a business. When you look at other challenges that we are facing, like now, scaling up, because we have products, beautiful products. We've had support from SGS and the SABS through the CEDA, testing our products. We've got beautiful approved products, and with the shelf life now, I'm very excited. Now it's time to access the market. So today I must say that I'm also very grateful in terms of listening to other speakers and the kind of opportunities that they have been telling us that they are available for us. we need funding, we need finance to be able to prepare ourselves to get into the market. One of the things that ends up killing most small businesses, it is the challenge to finance, because now you've done all the necessary steps that is needed. You are a compliant business, you have Proudly South African also there supporting you as they are supporting us as well. And now they've started asking for samples that they were sending with different ambassadors that we're going back, and other opportunities for online stores as well. Most importantly, yes, we have a capacity to produce 5,000. The funding to produce that 5,000. We've been to the banks, we've accessed loans and everything, but also you want to sleep at night. You don't want to think debt, you know, even if it's a little debt of 100,000 at the moment, of which it's nothing to worry about. But when you start thinking of taking a risk of having a loan for 1 million rand in the inconsistency that we don't know what we're going to face after this upcoming elections with electricity and everything, the only solution is to get the right support from the green economy support businesses and agencies to help us to be able to set up the kind of manufacturing that will not be distracted by even energy challenges in the country. When you go to Europe, you see most beautiful businesses that are thriving. They are eco-based businesses, and nothing can stop them. They tell you that we are manufacturing 24 hours nonstop. We have 3 shifts. What is then failing us to be able to get there? So I'm very optimistic today, listening to everyone speaking about the inputs, and we are ready to access those opportunities. We are ready to access the assistance to even go through processes, necessary processes, to be able to get where we need to be as a business. And our products are ready, they're certified, we're just ready to hit the market. And I must say also, another thing that's very important for our business that would add a significant value is to have an in-house lab, because not every time you're going to take your products to the lab to be tested. It would be nice to have the kind of testers every time when we receive the raw materials from our suppliers. We can literally test them there instead of having to taste a finished product when the batch is done. It could be so nice to test from the ingredients as they come in. So we'd like to build to that capacity of being able to have an in-house lab. It doesn't have to be big, just a small 6x6 room, just focusing on when we receive and also when we're preparing products to leave, so that we know that we are covered, especially when it comes to international market. Those things may be little things, but they're very important for us, and would like some insight and some deep understanding as well in terms of how to go about these things. And we are always ready to learn, I must say, and we are ready to work very, very hard, you know, to be able to get where we are meant to be. And I believe that I was able to share with you basically our overview of our business, and also the kind of challenges that the entrepreneurs will go through in order to be able to make it. And I must say that most importantly, what then keeps us going is just the passion and believing in our products and what it can do, how it can assist our communities to stay healthy at an affordable price, you know, access to our products, and also adding or contributing rather a grand value into the circular economy waste business. So I just want to say thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my journey. I highly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ntavi Singh. We are very grateful. We're the ones who were able to get a insight into what it is to run a business that's at the moment scaling, and it's really a business that has gone through the early ideation and early startup, but it's now fully commercialized, and even looking at export markets. The challenges doesn't stop, but it is very helpful for us to be able to look at maybe recommending subsidized cost in terms of testing and licensing and, you know, incentives from an export perspective that could be ring fence for entrepreneurs within circular and green economy sectors. There could be a number of solutions that we could put forward that government can consider. So I really want to apologize again for everybody who was delayed by a full half an hour, but it was so valuable to have the time to give the SMMEs the voice and the platform to give us a reality. The challenges doesn't stop, but there's a way that our research could potentially look at recommending how government can navigate and address some of these challenges so that we can keep our entrepreneurs going. We can keep them growing and scaling and maturing and surviving beyond 5 years to 10 years, because circular economy and the waste economy, it is the future. And it's important that our country stands behind the sector and really support the newcomers to these industries. That doesn't come with the rich uncles and all the networks of businesses. They say these days it's no longer friends, family and fools, but it's now called friends, family and fans, supporting social enterprises, believing in them. The fact that you self-funded in the early stages, you know, there's some entrepreneurs up to 1 million self-funded that I've engaged with, and I don't even know how they get to 1 million self-funded, asking around the networks just to get to a point where some investor would be able to look at them. So funding is a reality that is challenging in South Africa, and there needs to be a facility to look at green enterprises and subsidizing some of the cost and zero and low interest loans. So as tips, we want to thank everybody for today. If there's any pressing questions, we're welcome to take that. Michael has also put our contact details in. We're welcome to correspond with you via email. We will make a nice workshop report and share that with all the speakers and all the participants today. And we look forward to take this conversation further on the 31st of July. Michael and I are going to be working very hard in the next 2 months to put a very good research report together that we will present in July. And we will also make sure that our policy brief looking at recommendations to address these sectoral barriers are quite clear. So thank you for everybody. And is there any pressing questions? This is a good time. Michael and I are here to answer. I'm not sure if all the speakers are here, but we're always welcome to send an email and ask for specific questions. But I just wanted to make everybody feel welcome, that you are still able to ask some questions. We still have 21 people in the room, which is a really exciting. And thank you to all the speakers that has also been able to hang on a bit longer than anticipated. Okay, maybe if possible, can we just quickly open the poll, maybe a last poll results? And if there's no pressing questions, we can maybe just show the poll results if you are able to help us with that. Not sure, Michael, are you, or thank you. Okay, so we've had the long question here, which I don't think we would be able to answer now because that's going to be quite individual. I think let's go back to, we asked everybody about the barriers in the businesses to see if anything has changed. Access to market, access to finance was the ones that was really standing out. Let's look at the question, how confident are you that there are opportunities for SMEs in the waste sector? 73% said they are very confident, which is really good. I think there is opportunities, but once you also are accessing the opportunity and the funding, the challenges still doesn't stop. So I hope that didn't put any of the SMEs in the room off to just don't give in. We just need to find the solutions to better support you. We're going to be looking at the answers. Thank you. 19 people in the room actually gave inputs in terms of policy and programs that's supporting entrepreneurs in the waste sector. I think the last one was, yes, just we did look at the confidence. Is there anything that I might have missed, Michael? Just to make sure that we don't miss that. But we'll put all the findings in our workshop report, and we look forward to share that to everybody. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you for Rizal also for helping us with the facilitation of the Zoom session. It's been a really good session. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Goodbye for now.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.